What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Pain Points on the Pain to Profits podcast. And no, I'm serious, man. My legs are so sore. I'm on a comeback, dude. I went to Nashville last week. We were out there raising some money for the upcoming business buyout fund. And I spent like 3 days with these guys who are like 5 of the top commodity traders in the country right now, right? I mean, these guys are up.
What kind of level are we talking?
They manage anywhere from 60 to 200 million each. They got 10 traders. They're a CTA. Yeah, they manage a lot of money, and they're some of the top traders in the world. We were in Nashville, Nash Vegas, as they call it. So I worked out every day while I was there, but we go out to really nice dinner every single night.
Right.
You have like 2 or 3 drinks every night, and I don't drink, but maybe like once every 6 months. 2 or 3 drinks for 3 nights. I was ruined.
Yeah, you're done.
I felt like total garbage. So when I got back, I've just been on the straight and narrow. Not that I'm ever off the straight and narrow, but I'm trying to break under that 220 again.
Well, and you said a couple of days ago, you were saying like how you're back to actively doing lower body lifting, right?
Yeah, like squatting again, right? Barbell back squatting and things like that were things I couldn't do because I was dealing with the hip injury.
Yeah.
I mean, like 2 years ago, I could still put away like 500 pounds. I did 405 for a triple 3 weeks ago, and I've been destroyed for 3 weeks. So, anyways, man, I'm just trying to rebuild myself. It changes as you get older, so.
It does change as you get older.
But you gotta keep fighting against it, especially like being an entrepreneur and husband and all those things, dad. I'm trying to age well. And so training is a big part of that.
It's a substantial part. I was thinking about this yesterday, not the training part, but I was thinking about the fact that from 6 a.m. to about 11:30 p.m., I was almost in my chair for most of the day.
Not good.
Not good.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty substantial. There were like a couple breaks to go run an errand or something or go play with the kids real quick. But I was like, dang, that was a lot of time.
That's why I spend that hour a day walking.
Yeah.
And then on a day like today, I won't walk as long, but try to get like 10,000 steps a day because some days you're just in the seat for 8-9 hours. And so it's really hard on your body. That's the stuff that adds up and kills your health.
Absolutely. Today's episode is going to be fire. I'm really excited for where our conversation goes today because, normally we do these, we're talking about entrepreneurship, business, culture, politics, and it'll still be that. But the 2 articles we'll survey and the video we have today, we'll lead off with this New York Post article.
Okay.
So I don't know, did you hear by chance about the woman, Carly Russell? Okay.
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe. Well, over the last week, I started seeing this name, Carly Russell, and I looked on Twitter, but I'm going to just give some details here in this New York Post article about this woman. And it's a pretty sad and scary, I wouldn't say scary, but it can be scary if you're someone who might find yourself in a situation, but it's a sad circumstance. But I want us to riff on this as husbands, as fathers, as brothers, as business owners who lead and impact people. And so New York Post article headline reads, Missing Alabama Woman Carly Russell returned home on foot after vanishing for 2 days.
Dang.
And this comes by the way of Stephanie Pagones or Pagones. I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry, Steph. But check this out. So she says, many questions remain unanswered in the case of the Alabama woman who reemerged 2 days after disappearing from the side of a busy highway. Police noted that she returned home on foot. I'm going to skip one paragraph and here she gives some details. She reappeared at her home just over 48 hours later, around 10:45 p.m. Saturday, and her family called to say that she had returned home on foot. Previous reports indicated Russell was dropped off at the home and appeared to be in shock. Well, the reasonable question is, what the heck happened to this woman, right?
Right.
Well, here's the thing. It says, the Hoover 911 Center received a call Thursday night from a woman, later determined to be Russell, who said she was near mile marker 11 and saw a toddler walking on the side of the interstate. The boy was wearing a diaper, and Russell had estimated him to be around 3 to 4 years old. Russell said she had just gotten food after leaving her job at the time. Russell then hung up with police and called her brother's girlfriend as she pulled over to check on the child. But things went awry. My son's girlfriend heard her asking the child, "Are you okay?" She never heard the child say anything, but then she heard our daughter scream. Robinson Russell, her mom. From there, all you heard on the phone in the background is noise from the interstate. Police who arrived saw no sign of Russell or the young boy, but found her car door open and her belongings in the vehicle. The engine was running, and they found her phone on the ground along with her wig and her hat. Her purse was still in the car. Her Apple Watch was in her purse, and her AirPods as well. A witness reported seeing a gray vehicle near the scene, a light-complexioned male standing around Russell's car. But police also said no one other than Russell reported a young child walking around the interstate. She then goes on with the further details, but as you said, the notion of, hey, kid wandering down the road, Good Samaritan woman wants to check in on the kid.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't be walking by a highway. It's a trap. It's a bait. It's bait. That was mind-blowing when I came across it. I was like, I mean, we know stuff like this happens, but when you start seeing it cycle through news stories and posts and Twitter, and you're like, justice for this woman, and hoping people praying, and you're like, what happened? I guess from the standpoint of a leader, a father, an entrepreneur, our country seems to be, our world is in an interesting spot, but our country is in an interesting place where there seems to be this shift in climate, like spiritual, where casual things, hey, you might not want to be so casual anymore, or, there's so many stories. There was a TikTok post, girl was walking to the grocery store, got attacked, so I think maybe my question to you would be, what are some of the conversations maybe that you have with your daughters in terms of, the decisions they make and how the positions, because we want to empower our daughters and, but maybe what are some of those conversations you have or maybe will have that?
I mean, unfortunately, we have had to have some of those conversations, just about everything is as it may seem, because they're very innocent, 9 and 11, how old my daughters are.
Right.
So sadly, we've had to have those conversations. I think my biggest fear is where we live is very safe. Mm-hmm. We live in a really great community. Everybody knows everybody.
Right.
And so everybody to me seems a little bit asleep at the wheel. And that's unfortunately where tragedy strikes, right? Because it's unexpected. People don't lock their doors, right? So candidly, I'll say it on the podcast. That's why I conceal carry. And I dare you to come up in my house and see what happens. Colorado's got a great make my day law, so I'd love to try it sometime. And that sadly is like that's the stance that we got to have, And so, but with my daughters, it's just running in tribes and groups and making sure they're never standing alone, So that's a big part of it. But yeah, sadly, man, that's just the world that we live in. And unfortunately, in America, we think sometimes that those things can't happen to us, can't happen here. But they very much so can. And so, yeah, I don't know what the conversation is other than, don't just trust anybody and everybody, I guess.
Yeah, I think for me, from the spiritual lens, you do see this shift where darker, hard times as economics change, like the worst things happen in times of uncertainty and in times of economic peril and when things are sort of teetering. And so I guess for me, as I'm thinking about it and why I even chose the article, I think more than anything is just an opportunity for us to say like, hey, it's okay. I think it's okay to say, like, you'll know, I think you'll know like so this situation happened at night.
Yeah.
It happened at night. And I think I would never tell someone like, don't go help anybody. But I think women, in particular women and young people, need to be a bit more cautious about the things they're doing and just thinking through like, yo, it's nighttime.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty random. I've been driving down this road all my life.
Yeah. And there's just some kid walking out there.
Yeah. Like, and so I think just us being aware of like, I think mostly more than anything, it gives us an opportunity to say, hey, young people, pay attention. Those of you who are exposed or vulnerable, like just understand the world is in a different spot right now spiritually.
Yeah, I think using some spiritual discernment too, right? Of like thinking before you're acting and understanding that there's a real battle going on in the physical world and the spiritual world. And not everything that you see is as it might seem.
Yes, correct.
But yeah, like be smart, Yeah. Don't be, I'm probably not just jumping out of the car on the highway with not without like grabbing my gun, So
yeah. And that's really it. It's like, I wanted to kick this off with just like, hey, it's okay to stay on high alert. Like, stay on high alert, people. Like, because you just said it, which was where I was going, which is like, there there are unseen forces at play.
Yeah.
There are unseen forces at play, and it affects every area of our lives, including entrepreneurship.
Yep.
So, anyways, that was a New York Post article by Stephanie Pagones, Steph. We'll link to it in the description. But there's some follow up. She reportedly is not in a good place right now. I'm sure someone harmed her in some extreme ways. But we're going to pivot to the second article. Speaking of unseen forces. So the second article is Andrew Tate and Tucker Carlson did an interview. They put out an interview last week.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
Yeah. And Newsweek released just a little quick op piece about it. And I'm not going to touch on all of the article. I'm going to touch on mostly the first part and a couple of points that this gentleman makes. And this comes by way of Gerard Kionja. That is a terrible pronunciation. But
Hey,
here's
Cole, make sure that throughout the entire year, you just make a mashup of Darius trying to pronounce people's names on the show.
Well, literally the spelling is Kaonga.
You must be like African.
Yeah,
or something.
Okay, we'll leave that alone. Andrew Tate, the influencer who is under house arrest in Romania on charges of the R word, rape, has given an in-depth interview to Tucker Carlson. Carlson, the former news presenter who is now hosting a talk show on Twitter, shared the 150-minute video last Tuesday. Here's why I picked it. His tweet posting the interview had more than 37 million views.
Damn.
Though it is not known how many people have watched the full conversation. The video begins with Carlson urging the viewer to decide for themselves what they think about Tate. He then goes on through a litany of some other things as far as accusations and charges against him. Not so much worried about covering that. People have a bunch of opinions on that. You know, Tucker asked him essentially, what did you do in jail? And he says, I looked at the wall. I stared at the wall. I smoked cigarettes, did a lot of push-ups. I read the Quran, right? And he added that he had introspective moments through phone calls and things like that. So the reason why I picked this article is this guy is one of the most popular men in the world, Andrew Tate. Both of those men together are two of the most popular men. What the conversation that I think entrepreneurs need to begin to have is around how do we view masculinity, manhood today? Because you bring up the name Andrew Tate, and everyone and their mom who uses the internet has an opinion on him. But the core of his message is men step up and be men. And so I think when I'm thinking about this, I think what I'd love to touch on with you is just how we're processing the world's view of men today, and how does that either affect what you do, how we lead our children, how we are in our community, where we stand as men of faith. I think melding those together to speak to these young up and coming entrepreneurs out there who have ambitions, who want to do things well, but they feel like, I don't know, man, I feel like I'm supposed to be this tame, domicile guy, and I'm getting put in this box.
Do you want my opinion on just the situation? So,
yeah.
So first, let's address Andrew Tate. I got mixed emotions about the guy because of how he came up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he basically made money by exploiting the worst parts of society. That said, people change and grow, and that doesn't dilute what he's saying.
Yeah.
Though I have some maybe biblical views that don't align with his necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
but I think at the root of it is, a lot of men are just soft, and soft by like not pushing themselves physically, mentally, spiritually, in their family, in their relationships, the relationship with their kids. They're just kind of like floating through life and just kind of letting life happen. And to me, a man is somebody who's willing to take massive action and risk to pursue the things that God has put on their heart to do, while simultaneously taking care of the people who they are responsible for. Mm-hmm. Nothing that you have is yours. You're just the manager. And that means that, you know, you're not afraid to take the leap, pursue the business. You're not satisfied with just being dad bod bro who drinks beers and hangs out on the weekends, and you're also standing up for what's right and true.
Right.
At the sake of potentially causing some, I don't know, rifts between people.
Right.
Because truth is truth. And so I think a quote unquote alpha, as he wants to call it, is just somebody who's unaffected by everyone else's opinions of what they should be doing and instead just does it. Mm-hmm. So that's my take. I don't know if there's any magic to it, but.
Yeah. I mean, more than anything, I was trying to, and I didn't tee that up well for you because as I'm reading through the article, I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't really want to touch on, everyone tries to sprinkle in their accusations and things. So,
yeah, I don't know any of the accusations. I'm just taking the merit for what he says.
Yeah. And so I think more than anything, I wanted to touch on that, which is how are we thinking about masculinity today? Like, how are we processing that? Because that seems to be at the forefront of a lot of the culture wars,
Yeah, I mean, candidly, doesn't affect me at all whatsoever. And I think that's kind of the media's, and anybody who's letting the media dictate how they react is probably not listening to this podcast. But, what's the saying? Lions don't worry about the opinions of sheep.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's the reality of it. I got nothing.
No, it doesn't affect me. I think there are a lot of people out there who it is affecting, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to, in particular, I see it with young men. I think, if I'm being straight, I think our age gap of like that 30 to 42, there's some lot of just people that are just like, I don't care, I'm solid. But I think that a little bit older, that 45 to 55, and younger, that sort of 18 to 24, those gaps I think are very sensitive right now to public debate on what's masculinity, what's toxic masculinity. Just talking to high schoolers, like I just got off the phone with a young man who we were talking about some things, and he's just processing being a man and is feeling like there's so many different things and conversations and people who should be having the conversation are running from having the conversation, and there's just a lot there. And so,
yeah, I don't know what the answer is other than, if your identity is wrapped up in what the world's telling you should be and not like biblical truth, which is where I get my identity, then that's probably what your problem is.
Right.
Because that's going to change constantly.
Yeah.
Right. But the biblical truth doesn't change.
Yeah.
So you can't phase me. Like, I know who I am. So I think that's probably the bigger problem.
Yeah.
Is if you're caught in the whirlwind of whatever society's telling you should do, go to school, get a college degree. You need to be accepting of everybody. Don't be so manly. It's toxic. Then sure. Yeah. Like, I get it. Life can be hard for you.
Yeah.
You're like a rubber ducky just floating in the ocean, whatever way the wind blows and the waves go, that's the direction you go in.
Yeah.
Right. Or you can stake your flag. There's some hills you need to die on. Who are you? And stop trying to fit in with everybody. Mm-hmm. And if you're probably college age kid going to college, like that's the worst place to go, right? Because they're the most liberal, woke, poisoned mindset around toxic masculinity, right? And the things that they advocate for.
Right.
And so definitely that circle of people is influencing you and what you're thinking about. So you go hang around, a bunch of very successful entrepreneurs. They're not having those conversations. Like, in fact, I don't entirely even, I'm not enjoying this conversation because I think it's stupid.
Yeah. It's like I said, I didn't do a great job of teeing it up. And the reason why I brought it up, 40 million people watched in 4 days.
Yeah. That's a lot of people. I mean,
yeah. So I don't particularly enjoy the convo either. And it doesn't affect me. Like, I'm reading scripture in the morning. I'm not reading Newsweek, honestly. Yeah. I do this because we put out the Weekender when people want to be informed. But 40 million people watched it. And here's the thing that I think, it's funny how we do this and you're like, man, this sucks. Yeah. But it gets going somewhere because 40 million people watched this. And just this past week, something that's not related to that, but it includes Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson was part of putting on this summit for all the presidential candidates running from the Republican side.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, oh boy, many of them put their foots in their mouths and not make themselves look good. But at the same time, who benefits from this setting is actually the voters, the citizens. Mm. And so right now we're in this place where people are paying attention to people like a Tucker, people like an Andrew, people who are non-mainstream people, alternative voices. And I think as entrepreneurs, we have to be willing to step into these conversations, because what's happening is content creators are becoming mega influencers. Mm-hmm. And I actually tweeted to a Mr. Beast tweet over the weekend that content creators are the new Congress.
Yeah.
And so I think
that's the conversation I'd like to have. It's just the power of open source media, right? The internet was always designed to be, the common ground for the best ideas to be found and rise to the top. And just like capitalism, right? Like you make a good product, people buy, you make a crappy product, people stop buying it. And what's happened over the last 100 years is really crony capitalism. And, the people closest to the money can vote themselves a raise or bail themselves out. The media can drive the narrative of what society thinks. And what Elon's doing with Twitter is powerful, which hence is the reason why I'm back on Twitter, right? Is I think that that's a place where entrepreneurs can have influence, right? And you can really build a platform and an audience that you can speak your mind. And if it's a crappy idea, like tell me it's a crappy idea. If it's a good idea, let the good idea rise to the top. I mean, 40 million people, like that's what, 360 million people in the United States. So a ninth of the population. Mm-hmm. Probably not all United States citizens, but a lot of people watch that. And so I think that's the important part of like
100%.
Shut up, and if you don't like it, like change it. Like go out there and make some impact. That's what entrepreneurship is. Right. And Twitter's a great platform for that. And Tucker's, man, he's doing awesome stuff.
He's doing awesome stuff. And it really begs for, again, people being on Twitter, entrepreneurs being on Twitter. I posted last week, just saying like, hey, I think you guys can be greater resources. There's a lot of people out there who really walk the walk.
Yeah.
And they're quiet. They're burying that information for whatever other reasons, thinking, I don't want to end up like Andrew Tate. Yeah. But it's just important. And I think the more I see it, it's just like 40 million people watch that. Millions of people watched what happened this past weekend with the summit. And it's like the people are longing for input, for leaders.
My favorite part about the summit, and I didn't watch the whole thing, I just saw him like ending Mike Pence's career, where he basically just said, things have gotten worse over the last 3 years, and you're more concerned about what's happening in Ukraine, where he said most people can't even find Ukraine on the map. I don't think that's what the American citizen cares about right now, nor should we even be participating, in that war. Right. And that's a whole different podcast.
I'm not concerned.
Yeah.
That's not my concern. Tucker, I know you're going to do this. It's not my concern.
Yeah.
Dad. All right. So yeah, that's that to all you entrepreneurs out there. Like those of you who walk the walk, like I would say those of you who have walked the walk as men, like share that, because there's a lot of hungry people out there looking for that guidance who.
Yeah. Part of me, I get very frustrated with people. And this is probably just my own thing, but people who are like, no, I just want to make the money and I just want to live my quiet life. Right. And like, I don't want to be known. I don't want to be famous. It's not about being famous.
Right.
It's like you actually have the money and the ability to go and build a platform that allows you a voice to make impact and shape the way that culture moves, shape the way that values are driven in our society. And you're just choosing to opt out. So as an entrepreneur, specifically as a man, like that just sounds counterintuitive, right? Like you're just running from the fight.
Right.
The fight will show up on your doorstep, whether you like it or not.
Right. And it's probably coming through the door. So you better have make my day ready to go.
Yeah.
All right. So this last clip has been floating around the internet. And it comes courtesy of JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon. And it's let me make sure the sound's checked up. Oops, excuse me. Make sure that's good to go. Cole, C-Rock. That's such a good one. All right, let's check this out.
But I give the other way around. America has the best hand ever dealt of any country on this planet today, ever. Okay? And Americans don't fully appreciate what I'm about to say. We have peaceful, wonderful neighbors in Canada and Mexico. We've got the biggest military barriers ever built called the Atlantic and the Pacific. We have all the food, water, and energy we will ever need. Okay? We have the best military on the planet, and we will for as long as we have the best economy. And if you're a liberal, listen closely to me in that one, okay? Because the Chinese would love to have our economy. We have the best universities on the planet. They're great ones elsewhere, but these are the best. We still educate, most of the kids who start businesses around the world. We have a rule of law, which is exceptional. If you don't believe me, and we talk about Britain, Brazil, Russia, India, Venezuela, Argentina, China, India. Believe me, it's not quite there. We have a magnificent work ethic. We have innovation from the core of our bones. You can ask anyone in this room, what can you do to be more productive? Ask your assistants, factory floors, we do it. It's not just the Steve Jobs, it's this broad depth. We're the widest and deepest financial markets the world's ever seen. Okay, and I just made a list of these things, and maybe I missed something. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And we have it today. Yes, we have problems, but when I hear people down, if you travel around the world, get an airplane, travel around the world and go to all these other countries and tell me what you think. Go to Europe. You want to talk about bad, tough regulations and bad politics? So we have it all, and we just need to fix we've been shooting ourselves in the foot, in my opinion. We've been
So that's been floating around the internet. It's actually from a couple of years ago. But it's actually coming from even sort of left-leaning content creators where there's this bubbling sense of like, maybe we need to sell America more. Maybe we need to be more proud about being in this nation. And I know you're someone who appreciates being in this nation, and I play it because I wanted to touch on the beauty of entrepreneurship and the opportunity that it affords people. With you in particular, because you're burning the boats. You've burned the boats. There's no going back. And I think few people ever really level with an entrepreneur and just say like, why would you risk it? Why would you risk it? And it's under the context of this country that makes it such a great opportunity to risk it. And I don't think I've ever asked you, I know the reasons why I'm doing it, but I don't think I've ever asked you like, why? Because entrepreneurship didn't come from our families. Why did you bet on yourself?
I view entrepreneurship a lot like it's a creative expression. It's a lot like, writing music, painting a picture. You just see this potential, this vision for something that you want to go do. And not doing it is more painful than, staying in this job making $300,000 a year, right? It's the ability to control your time, your money, your relationships, your purpose, and to create meaningful work. Secondly, it's a huge fallacy that there's security in having a job. Mm-hmm. It's actually it's a trap. Very few people have gone on in a, call it safe career, making whatever, 6 figures, and gone on to be incredibly wealthy. That might have some wealth, but if you want asymmetric upside, then you're going to have to take some asymmetric risk. Now let's define risk. We all share the same fate. We're all going to die one day. And so when you put that in perspective, if we all share the same end game, then the only thing that matters is what we do with the time in between it. Mm-hmm. For me, it's just as painful to be stuck in a job where I'm making $200,000-$300,000 a year, as it is to go out there and just slog it out and make whatever, $100,000. And with the potential, though, the difference is in the potential of the upside. $200,000-$300,000 a year, I'm limited on my upside. I'll never be able to get to $1 million, but I might make $100,000, $200,000 for the first couple of years in entrepreneurship, mm-hmm. and then I can have a massive exit, or I can have a big year and I can make 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 million. And so it's all about the upside. So the I guess the downside risk like is equal and proportional to the upside, right? So the job is safer and secure, so there's less downside. There's similar and equal, less upside.
That's correct.
So the bigger the risk, the bigger the upside. And risk is just a relative frame in your mind of what you think it is, right? What is risky? You losing your status, losing your house, losing your car. Well, yeah, sure. But the worst case scenario is you die or you lose your family or something like that. That ain't going to happen. So I'm solid.
Yeah.
So when you get all that like garbage out of the way and you just take it for what it is like, I get to create this thing, this vision in my mind. I get to bring it to life. It's going to be hard, but it's just as hard as anything else. They always say, choose your hard, right? So it's the risk. Yes, it is a risk, but the upside reward is 10x greater than the downside.
Yeah. And really why I go there too is, that's in a way that it's actually related to the things that he's saying of like, dude, you have an opportunity. Like there's bad, but there's tremendous upside, you know?
Well, I think too, like people just, for the last 100 years, things have been pretty good post World War II, right? We've been largely a consumer economy. We've been in the largest expansion since World War II. We haven't had to use any of our resources as Americans. In fact, what happened is Europe was in such disaster after World War II that we effectively said, hey, we will guard the oceans with the largest navy in the world that we've created as a byproduct of coming out of World War II. And we will now consume your goods because you guys need to rebuild. So you need somebody to sell your stuff to. So we became a consumer economy. So for the last 100 years, it's just been take, consume. And we're at this transition point now where consumers will lose, right? Takers, employees who aren't thinking like entrepreneurs who just take from the system, right? They take no risk. They take from the system. And, you know, when shit gets hard, like, see ya, move on. We'll downsize the team and find somebody else who will, right? And so if you want to win in the next era, which is, I personally believe that the United States is removing themselves from the global economy in the sense that we will become a net producer, right? Manufacturing, we're already a net producer of oil and gas. We're going to see tons and tons of job creation and opportunity in the world of people who can create and entrepreneurs. And so, yeah, that's what makes America great. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like the human condition is we're designed to struggle. And we're in a place in society where there's very little struggling going on. So now we're arguing over like who gets to use the fucking women's bathroom and like what's a man versus a woman. It's like, that's ridiculous.
Well, you forgot you have a bathroom.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And you know what our grandparents were worried about? How am I going to eat? Right? How am I going to pay my bills? Right? And so when you don't have struggle, you will go find things to struggle for.
Come on.
And so, yeah, God bless America. Capitalism is alive and well. Entrepreneurs love that struggle because they internally inside, there's nothing more fulfilling and rewarding than that, than sowing your own seed, making your own way. You know what I mean?
I do.
And so that's as you can tell, it really pisses me off when people think that way.
Yeah. No.
Because they have forgotten of everybody before them that made it possible because they don't study history and they want to go burn the books or remove them, right? And they want to take down the statue and just pretend like it didn't happen. But history has a funny way of repeating itself, right?
It sure does. What do you say? History doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme.
Sure tends to rhyme.
Sure does rhyme. That's good, man. That's good. Well, that about wraps it for today. It's funny. I'm just being completely candid. Like, this is how we roll anyways.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I want to do the whole Andrew Tate article section over. I want to throw all that out.
Let's just ditch from the pot and we'll just jump to the last one on Jamie Dunn. It'd be short and sweet.
Well, it's funny. You know, we do these pods, guys. We do these pods, and the way Samson and I are, we don't hide things. We're straight up. Like, this world that we live in is real, and we're all on this journey. In particular, as entrepreneurs, from pain and profit. Yep. But I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, I love it. Like, I just love it. Like, you're like, I'm not enjoying this part of. I'm like.
It's not. It's like the warrior mentality, like the things that built the country, right? Like pioneers, like people traveling across the ocean to get freedom from the ruling of the king.
Yeah.
To have to make their own way, and then moving across the country to like stake their claim, and then creating an ecosystem that had never existed before, which is the best ideas rise to the top.
Right.
And so, yeah, I get it. Like, it's not perfect, and there's definitely people who are benefiting from
Find one that is
from exploding the system for sure. But then, like, let's compare that to other places, right? And so it ain't better in China. Like, don't get it twisted.
Yeah, or Sweden.
Yeah.
Or everything has its 100%. There's no place that has existed through God's sovereignty like this one.
Yeah, and you always hear that nonsense about the other countries are better coming from people who are, freaking employees, perennial college students, right? Like on their 10th year with their third master and like teaching, like adjuncts. It's like, what's wrong with you, man? Like you have literally no real world experience to speak on. Yeah. So to you, it feels great because you don't live in reality, right? Like you get student loans and all that bullshit, But like the people get out there and have actually pounded the pavement and done something would never, ever, ever, ever say that another country is better. They just wouldn't. Yeah. I've never heard it come out of anyone's mouth. It's always some woke fool who's saying that crap.
Yeah, that's good. Dude, you said something. You said, I'm gonna leave us all with this. When you aren't actually struggling, you go find struggle, which for some that is foolish, right? But for others, they choose the right kind of struggle. And I think that's such a profound statement to say because in the moment we're critiquing it because it's true. Like you've been blessed, you have so much privilege, you can pick a struggle and make something out of it. But I think the notion of struggle and just the notion of struggle, it's such a good thing for us. It pays off, and
there's a caveat though. If you are saying that my struggle is a byproduct of how good your life is, and you're somehow holding me back, then it's not a good thing.
Correct.
But if your struggle is, hey, I am personally accountable and responsible for everything that happens in my life,
right,
and I have the opportunity to change it. That doesn't guarantee that I have the equal outcome, but I have the opportunity to change it. But as soon as I move to the victim mentality of that I can't get something because somebody else, then you've already lost.
100%.
And that's not the American mindset. That's not entrepreneurialism. That's not capitalism. That's not what this country was built on. And your life will continue to suck. Whether you pick up and move to China, Canada, Sweden, Europe, it will always suck because you will find a reason for it to be somebody else's fault instead of your own.
Facts. What a note to end on. Well, another episode of Pain Points. Darius, Samson, and we're out.
Peace. Hey, what's going on, guys? If you want more hot content like what you just heard on this podcast, or maybe you want to get the Weekender insights or something like that, very first thing you can do is just join the weekly free newsletter. We drop it every single Tuesday. It's called Street Smarts. We're covering the 8 core concepts of business, from leadership, finance, growth, operations, product, service, sales, and marketing. And if you're lucky, we might occasionally drop some of the premium newsletter in your inbox as a free little sampler, but we talk about economics, sales, leads, brand, and then we drop this Weekender that we were actually riffing on as a part of this podcast here today. Effectively, for less than what you're probably spending on your weekly Starbucks, you can get this information sent to your inbox on a daily basis. We think it's pretty dope. We literally been writing content every single day for like 8 months now.
9 months now.
9 months now.
Yes.
In order to just help entrepreneurs on their journey and help them level up. And so if you are an entrepreneur, like you're constantly consuming content and you're taking that responsibility to get better and constantly grow, because if you ain't growing, you dying. And so that's it. That's my pitch. So if you haven't done it, Street Smarts, if you want to level up, get the premium service.